Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm George Benz, and I'm here with my co-host, Gail Burke. And we're continuing our series of conversations with the candidate. And as you can see from the banner, our guest this evening is Paul Guanci, running for re-election as the City Councilor-At-Large. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
Welcome
good to
to
see
the
you
show.
both. Thank you for having me. Always good to be in the BevCam studios.
Yeah. So why are you running again?
Why am I running again? Many people have asked me that, and I just really enjoy the job. I like the work of a city councilor. And it's not so much the big projects that come before us. It's the little things. It's the constituent service that keeps me going. Somebody needs their sidewalk fixed. Somebody needs a tree taken down. They think they need a stop sign at their end of the street. It's those are the rewarding things when you point somebody in the right direction or get something done for them, and you get a thank you at the end of it. It's the little things, and I think that people find me still approachable. I'm in downtown Beverly every day, so people will come in and stop by and say I have an issue with this, or they'll call, and they know where to find me, and I think that helps people out. And there's always something else to do. You think you want to wrap it up at the end of a term, and then the next big project comes before us. I would love to be around when the middle school opens its doors. Mm-hmm. As head of the city council, I've been in charge of authorizing all the bonding for the schools. So it's I'd like to be around when they open. And then our next project is going to be a police station. So I really enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
Where would you like to see the police station?
Well, I know that the city of Beverly, we've been talking about it since I first ran back in, I'm not even going to say when I first ran for office, but there was that piece of property in front of the Cummings Center that Cummings owns, but has deeded to the city for use as a public safety facility. That is the mayor's current plan to do that. I think a police station would go great at Briscoe with a couple of other city functions there. The building has historic value. We recently had a committee that voted to surplus it and move on. But I think it's something we need to take a look at after the election.
It's
a great
viable?
spot.
Cost-wise, is it viable to put it there?
Where, at Cummings or?
No, at Briscoe.
I don't know. You'd have to look into it. I mean, I've always suggested that you get a big developer to go in there, maybe somebody that's already doing work here in the city, and rehab the entire building, fit it to what the city needs, and then lease it back to the city. Because we don't have the money to undertake a big construction project like that.
Well, it's a shame because that's about the best auditorium in the city is in Briscoe. And it's hard to say, what are you going to use an auditorium for until you need one and you want to have a big crowd show up and talk about something. The other thing that always gets me is that you get caught in this game of how much do you upgrade, and then you have to start meeting all the new codes. And that usually gets to be the argument that, well, we can't afford to do all this stuff and meet the code and still do it economically. But yet, somebody like Windover will take over one of the old schools and rehab that into housing, and they can somehow or other make money at it. So I think the idea that you're suggesting of having somebody do a business office type of rehab on that and start selling space or leasing space, I think that's the other thing that bothers me is that they're talking an awful lot about affordable housing. And we've had Jason Silver on here one day and Andrew DeFrenza, and you start to look at the numbers on affordable housing, and you have to be pretty far up in the daisy chain to be able to afford affordable housing. And I think we need more jobs in town rather than more residents.
Well, we do need to take a step back when it comes to housing development as it is. Because with everything going on Rantoul Street and the possibility of Briscoe ending up as housing, how's it going to affect our city services? How's it going to affect our school department? And how's it going to affect our water supply? All long-term things. But when we talk about affordable housing, it's amazing that a family of four that makes $75,000 a year, they qualify for affordable housing. It's gotten to the point where that's how expensive it is to live, not only in Beverly, but just the North Shore in general.
Yeah. So you're really looking to, how do you get people to have jobs that can accumulate an annual income of $75,000? And you're not going to do that all in service jobs.
No. Well, you hope that Cummings still expands. Cummings still has work to do up on Dunham Road
Yeah.
in terms of company, but a lot of their stuff, people need to be fitted specifically by education. It seems to, I mean, the service industry is in trouble as it is. Retail, food service, we can't find people to work for 40 grand a year or even 50 grand a year because it's not enough to work and live in the same town.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about education on this show. Excuse me. One thing that we talked about with the other candidates is the Essex Tech School and how many kids from Beverly are on a waiting list. 300, I think, was the number. That there's no space for them. And what do you do with these kids? There's no other technical school around here.
No, and it's their right to go to that school. We pay for
right.
that. We paid to have it, that beautiful new building done. We pick up some of the debt service on it, and unfortunately, it sounds like it wasn't built big enough. And the opportunities over there are a great fit for some kids. Now, I hadn't heard that 300 was the waiting list, but obviously it's far too big.
Yeah. Well, I remember when the city council were kind of pushed into agreeing to do it. And at that time, there were no numbers. Nobody knew, first of all, how much it was going to cost. And second of all, how many kids would be allowed to go there. And as we found out, sadly, and it's not just Beverly that has a waiting list of children. So the problem is, and George, you talked a little bit about Peabody and
Yeah.
what they're doing.
There was an article in the paper 3-4 weeks ago now where Peabody is starting to introduce in their high school IT type of courses for the high school students. And they get into a very delicate situation, and they're working it out with Essex Aggie or North Shore Regional Tech, whatever you want to remember it as, because by charter, the Essex Tech is supposed to do certain things, and the high school is supposed to do certain things, and never the twain shall meet. But yet, when you start talking about IT, it's sort of stepping on the toes of the Essex Tech, but at the same time, they don't have the capacity to handle everybody that needs that kind or wants that kind of background. So the high school is starting to do it. So one of the things we've mentioned a couple of times with different candidates is, okay, technically the city council only looks at the grand total on the school budget and says yay or nay. But at the same time, would hope that the city council could do some sort of influence peddling with the school committee, say, hey guys, we got to take up the slack. There needs to be some sort of vocational, technical, whatever you want to call it, STEM is the other fancy term,
Right.
education in the city, and we need more of it. So next time you come with a budget, we would be very comfortable if we could see a big step in that direction. We'd like you, as the leader of the tribe downtown, to take the lead on something.
Now, that's a great question because by charter, the school committee and the city council have to have an annual meeting every year. We usually do it in the spring after the school budget's already been voted on and presented to the mayor. Because there was a little back and forth between the mayor's office, the city council, and the school committee last year, President Chris Silverstein and myself sat down actually yesterday and decided that we needed to have that meeting in January before the school committee sets its priorities.
That makes more sense.
Well,
Yeah.
and what they want to do is they want to hear from the city council as to what's important to us. I mean, for years, and you'll see candidates over the next 2 weeks talk about full free day kindergarten. And anybody can say that, but you have to figure out, okay, how are you going to get there? So our intent, and we can only hope if we're not in leadership positions in January, that whoever's president of both bodies will take that charge up and have a meeting nice and early before everything is done and figure out actually what we need. And that's a great question to talk about the waiting list at the Technical Institute and what we need here in the city.
Well, I know we read a lot about this free all-day kindergarten, and I'm always, it sets my teeth on edge because I picture these 5-year-olds going to kindergarten all day long. That is a long school day for these kids. And I know it's the popular thing to do, and it's popular to have it free, but how do you pay for it? It's like, you know, you have a half-day free kindergarten.
Which is
Okay.
required by state law.
Right. Why can't you end it there? You want to push these kids into staying all day, it becomes like a big daycare center. And I know people are not happy when I say that.
No, that's okay. And I mean,
But-
I would have to respectfully disagree. Both of my kids went to full-day kindergarten, my younger kids, and they seem to thrive there. And in terms of how long of a day it is, it's really only 8 to 2, with plenty of breaks in between. Full-day kindergarten actually allows a lot of mothers or parents in general to get back in the workforce with young kids.
Yeah,
But
this-
that's the taxpayers paying for it.
Yeah.
We're not paying for it right now.
No, but
but
if
that's the
we
plan.
did, it
If we-
would.
yeah, right.
And then the next step is pre-K,
Yeah.
all day.
Yeah.
So I can see how this is coming in that direction.
And then it's 3-year-olds and, you know,
But it gets
babies and
down
all
to
that.
back to the point you were making, that you and Chris Silverstein got together and said, we ought to sort of agree on priorities before we start putting numbers on a piece of paper. And this is an issue on the priorities of, I think it was the number 600,000 a year is the rough value of, or rough cost of full,
Yeah, a little more.
a little more. Would that be better spent on something else?
Well, that's the school committee last week had a brainstorming session, and they threw up a bunch of stuff on the wall, what they wanted to do and what they, it was a wish list. And full free day kindergarten, I don't think is the number one priority. There were a lot of other things that members of the school committee think are more important. I mean, one thing that I can't believe is that none of the elementary schools have librarians. It's all done by parent volunteers.
Well, in the elementary schools, I can remember years and years ago when my kids were in school, it was the same way. They didn't have paid librarians in the elementary schools. They had one at the high school, and at the time they had one, I think they called it junior high in that time, in those
Okay.
days. But yeah, the parents came in. I was one of them. I ran the school library in an elementary school, and that's the way it was. So I think, and because there's such a small percentage of parents that have kids in the schools, and you put the burden of everything they want for the schools on the whole city. You know, there are a lot of people in Beverly or Peabody or Salem or wherever, the taxes are killing them.
Right.
So, you know, I think that the schools and the city council have to be more aware of that and take that into consideration before they grant them, the schools, extra money, and you don't even know sometimes where it's going.
Yeah. I can see the challenge you're going to have is that everybody's got, hey, only a few bucks more and you can do my pet project. And by the time you add up all these pet projects,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
it's
just
got to come
busted.
from somewhere.
Yeah,
right.
you
You want
just
to do
busted the
something here,
budget.
you
Yeah.
can't do it over
That's
here.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your priorities?
Right.
And at the same time, I follow a blog on Prospect Hill neighborhood. And a couple of the issues that keep coming up are the one you mentioned earlier. Where are we going in the city relative to more buildings for residents, more housing? And how much of it is going to be affordable housing and how much is going to be at the economy level? And at the same time, the other issue keeps coming up is And it's almost similar argument to the kindergarten. You know, everybody around us has got a full-day kindergarten. We should have one too. Well, everybody around us has got 2 water meters. Why don't we have 2 water meters too?
George, I've been banging the drum on that one for
I know.
for 15 or 16 years,
Yeah.
and the former mayor wouldn't even entertain it. And at least now we have Mayor Cahill and his finance director. We actually finally got them to do an independent outside study. We'll get the results back from that in December. It's always gone back to, well, if we were just starting out now, then it would be easy to do. But because we already have a water system in place, we have to figure out some kind of a formula so that we can make sure we're paying our assessment over at SESD. But when it comes down to it, what's right is right. If you're getting charged a sewer fee for water outside, that's wrrong.
Yeah. Well,
And I'll always say that.
well, the question then comes down to is we hear this argument, this is going back and forth on the website, that if you're using water, you're paying your sewer rate and your water rate on how much water you consume. So the assumption is that when we have to pay for the sewer services over in the South Essex District, it's on how much water are we shipping over there. So it's proportional to where it's used. So that the argument that we have to figure out how we're going to pay the total bill and how much are we going to have to raise the rates to cover people who have the second meter, that needs a better explanation. I think that's going down sideways with a lot of people.
Well, that's why we started this discussion with this administration last October or November. And it finally got to the point where we actually hired a new budget analyst. The city council had the same budget analyst. And one of the employees that we hire, the same analyst for almost 20 years. And last June she left, June of 2016, and we ended up going through 2 rounds of hiring. We found a gentleman that had worked for the state for his career in the Department of Revenue, and he suggested that we push the administration to have somebody do an outside study and find a way that we could do this that makes it work for those people that want the second water meter and then doesn't put a burden on the people that don't want a second water meter.
Well, that raises another interesting question we had a discussion with another candidate on. The city charter was redone, what, 10 years ago?
96, 97, no, 20 years.
20 years ago.
It was before I was in
And
office.
the net result is we went from having a relatively strong city council and practically equal mayor to a very strong mayor and a much less powerful city council. A lot of the discussion we've had tonight about doing something about Essex Aggie or getting more kids into North Shore Regional Tech, doing something with the school system, the water meter, implies that there needs to be more authority or more initiative given to city council, because you're the guys that answer the phone when somebody says, hey, my kid didn't get into Essex Aggie.
Right.
What are you going to do about it?
Well, we don't have a chief of staff to take our phone calls, although the mayor's chief of staff is very good at working with the city council.
But every one of your phone calls is on the website, so you're known.
Yeah. Go back. I just lost my train of thought because I was smiling. I was smiling about Kevin Hartunian because I have him on speed dial.
No, the question is, you guys at the city council level, you're the direct response to the constituents.
Right.
And as a result, it would be nice if you could make something happen without having to go asking the chief of staff, can you give me an appointment with the mayor so I can talk about...
Right.
So I think there needs to be maybe a rethinking of the charter to put a little more muscle, if you could do it crudely and rudely, in the hands of the city council so you can make some things happen without having to get bogged down with chasing through outside studies.
Right.
Yeah, 20 years is a long time you really need to review the city charter. One thing that I was,
We have to have a charter review in 2020.
okay, 2020?
Yeah, every 10 years. We
But what do you-
review the city ordinances every 5,
Yeah.
and the charter gets reviewed every 10.
But when you want to change the city charter, how long a process is that? Do you have to go through?
It all depends on what the change is. If it's just something really simple, a word or two, a comma or an exclamation point, the city council can do that. But if it's a substantive change, it has to go out on the ballot.
One thing that
We've always talked about going to a 4-year term for mayor. And that would be
yeah.
something that would
Yes,
require a
yeah.
charter change.
If it were up to me, I would take a look at the school committee. Either have a 4-year term for school committee, or even more important, have them run citywide rather than just in their own ward.
Yeah, other cities and towns do that, I think.
I came from Melrose,
Yeah.
and they ran citywide. It's a lot more work, but when you run for in the ward, I know I ran into this when I ran for school committee. I knew not a lot of people, but I knew a number of people. They didn't live in my ward, so they couldn't vote for me.
Right.
And that was a bit of a handicap. I might have lost anyway, but because I was new here and so forth. But I
How long
think
ago was that?
that was in 2008,
Wow, almost
Yeah.
10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you having fun yet?
And it was interesting, and I met a lot of people. But the point being that when you run citywide, it's not as intimidating for people, for parents in the schools, to call up a school committee person because you have a number of them. And if you don't get good response from one, you can feel free to go on to another one.
Yeah.
Whereas when they're in the ward, you have one.
Well,
And I know in Beverly, there are several school committee people that never have a challenger. Chris Silverstein has never had to run a race.
Well, if you look at the school committee again this year, there's no contested races.
Right.
It's because it's that difficult of a job. And I've always said since the beginning, since I got involved, the school committee is head and shoulders above more difficult than what we do on the city
You said
council.
that to me
Right.
when I was
when
running.
you first
Why are
ran.
you running for the school committee and not the city council?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well, they have a lot
well,
more meetings.
you deal with emotions, you deal with
Yeah.
kids, you deal with
Yeah.
parents. It's more stressful than what we do.
Yeah, I agree. But they don't have much power anymore. They used to have more power.
Right.
And little by little, it was taken away. So the only power they really have is to hire and fire a superintendent. So,
And they had more power over their budget years ago, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
something that, we were in financial, back in 2002, 2003, now I'm really dating myself, our state aid tanked. So, Bill Scanlon was mayor at the time, 2001, actually it was Tom Crean was the mayor at the time that was the one term that he was there. And our state aid tanked. We got through that, Bill Scanlon was reelected, and our new goal was to build a new high school. And he put down a mandate to the school department that if we want to build a new high school, and if we want to do it without a debt override, you have to make sure that that school budget doesn't grow more than 3.5% or 4%. And that's what they were told years ago. So it's in direct contrast to what's in the charter in terms of the school committee's powers. But between last year and I think what's going to happen this year, I think you're going to see the school committee try to take a little more charge of their budget. And whereas Mayor Cahill will say, okay, this is what you have to work with, they could come up with a budget that is $500 million or $1.5 million more than what the mayor asks for, and throw it in his lap to say, okay, this is what we need. You cut it. You take a look at it.
That'll be different for a change, yeah. 'Cause
But
I
is
can remember
he-
when the school committee passed the budget and city had to come up with the money. That was the
Right.
end of the story.
yeah.
But
And-
I'm dating myself even more. That's back in 1973.
Oh, my goodness, Judge.
Yes,
Well, how many, you were on the school committee a couple of terms?
just 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, up to 73, yeah. And that was the surprise we got when they changed the rules that said school committee does not set their own budget
Right.
anymore.
I want to change the subject to sanctuary cities. We have asked the other candidates how they felt about sanctuary cities. And I was particularly concerned when I read an article in the Salem News today about a drug bust in Beverly, cocaine trafficking, and they $25,000 worth of cocaine and crack. They had guns.
Right on Cabot Street.
Yeah, yeah. So apparently the police had been watching them for a while, but it gave a little background of one of the candidates. And the other candidate, they didn't say very much at all. And I'm wondering, because they're very reluctant to put in whether these people are illegal aliens or not. So I'm always a little concerned when I see nothing about, you know, and with a foreign-sounding name. So I wonder, since it did happen here in Beverly, what the city council would do, what would you do? The schools are sanctuary schools. As a city councilor, how would you vote if it came to a vote? And what would you say?
Well, it's never been presented to us
Right.
by either the mayor or by one of the councilors. I know the school committee did what they did. I think that sanctuary word is very divisive and has people banging heads all over the North Shore.
Yeah.
I think Mayor Cahill handled this really well. He wasn't in favor of a sanctuary ordinance or making us a sanctuary city. So he came up with a mayoral declaration about Beverly's values, and it spelled out what we already do for those people that come to our city that are looking to be viable members of our community. I mean, and the police are always going to go after those people that aren't, like you said, this gentleman here that got busted today for drugs. We already take care of those people that want to be viable citizens in our in Beverly. So I thought that what he did was good, very stand-upish. That he came up with his proclamation that he presented to the city, presented to the city council. We voted on it, and that was it. And it hasn't come before us again.
Well, fortunately for the police and the city of Beverly, the judge is not one of the liberal judges that gave them low bail, which was
The bill's
requested.
really high.
Yeah, and it was.
Over
That's good.
100,000.
That's how it should be.
Of course it should, but you got a lot of judges that aren't doing that. They get out and they're on the street again. So what happens then? They're out on the street until it comes time for their trial or
No,
their
we have
hearing
a
or whatever.
drug problem in this state and in this country
Yeah, we
because
do.
we're too lenient with people that break the law like
I
that.
think people don't really want to admit that in their own city they have a problem as well. And it's here. It's everywhere.
Right. You can't open up the Salem News every day. For those of us that still read the paper, go to the obituary page and see somebody, young or old, that died tragically
Yeah.
or suddenly
Yeah.
because they've overdosed.
Well, Paul, we only have a minute or so left. So
It always goes so fast when you're on
know.
what's happening.
you want to give a little wrap-up about your campaign?
I'm just really looking forward to continuing my work on the city council. You have 6 great candidates. As many times as I've run, we've never had that many people run for Councilor-At-Large. You're allowed to choose up to 3. I always respectfully ask that the people of Beverly give me another shot at doing what I'm doing. When it all plays out, I would be honored to be council president again. But if it so happens that I finish 2nd or 3rd, I'll help whoever finishes first transition into the role. We still have a lot of things to do: streets, sidewalks, a police station. We need some new buildings for the public services department. And it all comes down to constituent service. I really enjoy it still. People know where to find me. I think it helps that I'm a small business owner in the city. I have kids in the schools. I have a daughter who graduated from Beverly High and is now working at Beverly Hospital as a nurse after college. I'm very vested in the community. I'm looking forward to keep going.
Well,
Very
thank
good.
you.
Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Always good to see you.
Same here. I want to thank our viewers for watching us, and we will continue with our interviews with the candidates. We have 2 more to go, so stay tuned, and we will see you next time.